Good morning, everyone. Today's Tuesday. Today we learn the fourth Perek of Yevamos. Today's shiur is um, today's shiur. Seder Nashim is sponsored by our good friends at Imperial Advisory Group. They're a team of CFOs ready to help you on demand to, with all the CFO stuff of your business. If you need their guidance, you want to see more about them, just their website, www.imperialgrp.com. Um, Today's shiur is Lili Nishmas, Rosh Ba Simcha Kohen Aronachim Ben Simcha Kohen Rishon Mordechai Ben Shepsel Bracha Sarvash Molid Ben Yamash Ben Yosef, Meir Den Hasham Shall have an Aliyah, and Refuah Shlema for Yisrael Ben Rachel Leah, Rachel Bas Pesel Zelda, Avram Yitzchak Ben Risha, Chai Bas David Bela, Refuah Shlema B'Sel Shar Chol Yisrael, and as a schus for Tzvi Noach Ben Bracha, Rachel Leah, Sefer Bracha Batzlacha, and all their endeavors. And that's all for today. Let's go. Perek Dalit is a long Perek today. I apologize. The next few Parakim are going to be short. I answer they're easy, but they're going to be shorter. This one is today's Perek is 13 Mishnayos, and it's not so easy. So here we go. Hang in there. Perek Dalit Mishnah Aleph. So now we're talking about Chalitza. Okay. Um, so when a person is supposed to wait 3 months before doing Yibum or Chalitza with the Yavama. Okay, so again, Reuven and Shimon are brothers. Reuven dies, and Reuven dies without children, and so now Reuven's wife falls to Yibum to Shimon. Okay, Shimon must wait 3 months from the day of death. From the day he must wait 3 months from the day of Reuven's death to do Yibum or Chalitza for a very one simple reason. You want to know if Reuven's wife is pregnant or not. And that usually starts showing after 3 months. So if she's pregnant, then there's no Yibum, there's no Chalitza, because now there's a Zeret Shakayama of Reuven. Reuven now has an offspring, and therefore Yibum and Chalitza is now Aser. If 3 months have passed, then you can do that. Then you have the mitzvah of Yibum or Chalitza. So that's the intro to the Mishnah. So Mishnah Aleph, Chalitza Yivim, if someone does perform Chalitza with his Yavama, if Shimon did Chalitza with Reuven's wife, the name says Maberes, and she was found later on to be pregnant, the Yalda, and she gave birth. So what's the halacha? Bisman Shavlad Shal Kayama, when the child is viable, the Chalitza is meaningless, since she did not need it. Who Motor Bekrosa? The Yavam, Shimon in this case, is permitted to marry her close relatives. He Moteres Bekrovav, and she is permitted to his close relatives. V'lo paslam in kahuna, he has not disqualified her from marrying a kahuna. Okay, period. Havlad shel kayama. If the child is not viable, then the chalitza was necessary. So who asa b'krova, then he is therefore forbidden to her close relatives. Who asa b'krova, and she is forbidden to his close relatives. V'paslam in kahuna, and he has disqualified her from marrying her into the kahuna. Right. Okay. Mishnah Beis. Hakona says Yivim Tov. Someone married his Yavama within 3 months of her husband's death. The Nim says Paris, and she was later found to be pregnant from the first husband. The Yalda, she gave birth. Bisman Shavlan Shel Kayama. When the child is viable, Yotzi, then the Yavama send away the Yavama. he cannot stay married to her since she is an heir to him. And they are chayiv in a korban chata since their Yibum was shogeg, was unintentional. But if the child is not viable, if the child is not able to survive, it was stillborn or child died prematurely, unfortunately, Yikayim, he may keep the Yavama as his wife since she indeed required Yibum. Okay, so now what happens if the Yavama gave birth to a viable child, but we don't know whether it's from the first husband or from the second or from the Yavam? Safik ben Tish the Rishon. If it's not known whether the child was born of a 9-month pregnancy from the first husband, in which case the Yibum was usher. Safik ben Shimon or whether it was a 7-month pregnancy from the second husband, in which case the Yibum was mutter because the first husband did not have a child. Yotzi, either way, the Yavam must divorce the Yavama since she might be also to him, and you're gonna go the Chumrah. But the child is a kosher child. He's not a Mamzer. Because either way, he was not born from a sinful relationship. If he was really the child from the first father, then it's all good. And if he's the child of the Yavam, then it's also good. So he's not the child's not a Mamzer. And the couple is subject to an Asham Toloi, which is a chatas where they're not sure if they sin or not. It's a suffix. But to be the chumrah, they're going to get divorced. Mishnah Gimel, Shomeres Yavam Shana. Okay, so now the next two Mishnahs are talking about monetary rights of the Yavam and the Yavama. Mishnah Gimel talks about the rights of the Yavam to the Yavama's property before doing Yibum. So, in an ordinary marriage, a man has no rights to his wife's property between Kiddushin and Nisuin. He only has the rights after they actually go under the chuppah. But now what happens? So in a regular shidduch, there's a Mishnah in Ksubas, which we're going to see probably in a couple of weeks, that about a machlokas, about whether a woman who inherits property during that time, if she inherits property between the time she got engaged to the time she got married, like what is the halacha of that property? So Beis Shammai say that she's allowed to sell it, so that's completely hers. But Beis Hillel say that she cannot sell it to other expects to get rights to it after the nisuin. Now our Mishnah here begins by teaching that Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel agree with regard to a Yavama selling property that she inherited after her husband's death, but before the Yavama married her Yibum. So the other case will be discussed in Ksubas, and that's what we're talking over here regarding a Yavama, what happens to the property. So that's the intro. So now, Mishnah Gimel Shemeres Yavam Shenafu Nechasim. If a woman awaiting Yibum inherited property, Modim Beis Shammai Beis Hillel Shemacheres and Osenes Rekayim. Both Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel agree that she may sell or give the property to others while waiting Yibum, and the transaction stands. Mesa, if a woman awaiting Yibum died after the Yavam performed Maimer, I mean that again we said the Maimer is the erisin for a Yavama. It's not the same as erisin of a Pnuya. Mayasu b'ksuba. So what should they do with her ksuba? With the so ksuba payment, we know that a ksuba of a basula is 200 zuz, and the ksuba of a paula, someone who was previously married, is 100 zuz. And obviously, the chassan can add on additional amount, but the standard amount is 100 for a beula, 100, 200 for a ksuba, for a basula. So now, what's the status of a Yavama? Does she get 100 or 200? And what about the son bars? It's a nichne, so nichne, the two other things over here. Nichse son barzel is the property that she brings into the marriage that the husband guarantees to pay her the original value of the property in case he dies before her or divorces her. That's called nichse son barzel. Nichse mulug is where the woman chooses to keep her property under her own ownership and instead lets her husband use and profit from it during their marriage. That's called nichse mulug, and its value is not written into ksuba. If the woman dies before the man, he inherits both the nichse mulug and the nichse son barzel. So now, so what's going to do with her ksuba if she's wearing Yibum? What should they do with the ksuba? And what about the properties that enter and leave the marriage with her? I mean, does all this go to the Yavama, or does her family inherit it from her? So Beis Shammai says he only addresses the second question. That the heirs of the husband, I mean the brothers the Yavam, they divide the next milug with the heirs of the woman's father. That because we're not sure over here whether the mimer gave the Yavam rights to these properties as though he had married the Yavama, or whether the mimer did not give him such rights, in which case it should go to her family. So since Beis Shammai is uncertain who the legal heir should be, then the two possible heirs, the Yavam and the father of the Yavama, they divide the property together. Beis Hillel says differently. Beis Hillel says, Nechasim v'cheskasim, the properties that are nechse son barzel, they remain under their previous status. Ksuba, v'cheskas yarshi abal. But the ksuba payment remains under its previous status, belonging to the husband's heirs, since she never had any claim to that money. And all the properties that enter and leave the marriage with her, mean the next milug, are not divided as Beis Shammai said. The cheskas yarshi av will remain under the previous status belonging to her father's heirs, since Beis Hillel hold that Mimer gave the Yavam no new rights to the Yavama's property. Okay, Mishnah Dalet. Kansa, once the Yavam marries her, once the Yavam marries the Yavama, Hare he she is his wife in respect. She is now his full wife. Except that the responsibility for ksuba, should the Yavam die or divorce, rests on the property of her first husband rather than on the property of the Yavam. The Yavam does not collect the ksuba promised by her first husband unless her marriage to the second husband to the Yavam dies. Now, if the Yavam has no property, then the Yavam, if the first husband had no property, then the Yavam must give her a ksuba of her own. Okay, Mishnah, hey, mitzvah gadol, big gadol Yavam. We discussed earlier, a couple days ago, that it's a mitzvah for the oldest brother to perform Yibum. We learned that on Sunday. Lo ratza, if he does not want to do so, Mahalchin al Kohach. We go around to all the brothers in their birth order, Reuben, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, etc., to see if one of them might want to perform Yibum before we allow Chalitza. Lo Ratzu, if they all do not want to perform Yibum, they go back to the oldest brother, Amnon said to him, Halecha Mitzvah. The mitzvah is upon you, oh Cholotz, oh Yavim. Either you perform Chalitza or Yibum, the choice is yours. As long as there's only one brother who wants to do Yibum, then they can't do Chalitza. Mishnah Vav. If the oldest brother pushed off the Yibum or Chalitza onto the younger brother, who is a child, saying that we should wait until he grows up to see whether he might want to perform Yibum, or a younger brother pushed it off until the oldest brother is saying that we should wait until he comes back from overseas to see whether he wants to perform Yibum, or onto a deaf, mute, or insane brother saying that we should wait until they become mentally competent to see that what they want to do Yibum or not. We do not, the person does not listen to them. Rather say to him, the mitzvah is on you, and you are the oldest brother available right now to perform Yibum or Chalitza, Cholotz, Yavim. Either do Chalitza or do Yibum, but the mitzvah is yours, you need to do it now. Make a decision. Mishnah Zayin. Cholitz, the Yevamos, continuing with the topic, the brother who performs Chalitza with the Yavama, Harei hu ke'echa min achin v'nachla. Is like any of the other brothers in regard to inheriting the dead brother's property, since they all divide it equally. V'hem yesh sham av. But if there's a father who's still alive, nechas sham av, the property belongs to the father, since a father is considered a closer relative than a brother with respect to Yerusha. On the other hand, Hakona says the brother who marries the Yavama, he gains all of his dead brother's property, even if the father is still alive, because he's taking responsibility for the wife, and therefore he gets everything. But Yehuda says, Bangkok, whether this way or that way, whether the brother performed Chalitza or Yibum, Yesham of the Chazm Shalach. So according to Yehuda, if there's a father still alive, then the father gets the property that belonged to the son that was nifter, and not the Yavam, according to Yehuda. Okay, so we learned previously that a man gives chalitza to his Yavama, that when he gives when he does chalitza, he becomes us to her close relatives, and she becomes forbidden to his. So we're going to see which relatives become usher now. If someone performs chalitza with his Yavama, who usher the said, he is forbidden. He is usher to marry any of her relatives who would have been forbidden to him had he married his Yavama. Who usher b'krovav, and she is also forbidden to marry his relatives for the same rate. Who usher b'ima over emavia. He's also to marry her mother, her mother's mother, and her father's mother. Over bita, over vaspita, over vaspina, and he's also to marry her daughter, her daughter's daughter, and her son's daughter. And to marry, it's also us to marry her sister as long as the Chalitza is still alive. But the brothers of the men who perform Chalitza are permitted to marry all these relatives, because they're not their relatives. They're not their relatives. All the relatives of the one who did Chalitza. V'hi asura be'aviv aviv. She is usher to marry his father and his father's father, and his son and his son's son. And also she's also us to marry his brother and his brother's son. Mutter Adam Bekrova Saras Chalitza. A man is mutter to marry the close relative of his Chalitza's co-wife, since he did not perform Chalitza with her. So, for Aser Betsaras Krovas Chalitza, but he is also to marry the co-wife of his Chalitza's relative in the case where the co-wife's relative fell to him in a second evil situation. Okay, let's go on. Mishnah Chet. If someone performed Chalitza with his Yavama, Nasa Achiv as Achosha, and his brother married her sister, the mace, and then died childlessly. Chalitza the sister performs Chalitza with the remaining brother, it may not be taken in Yibum by him, since, as we learned in the last Mishnah, she is answered to him by the Din Derabana. However, if someone divorced his wife, and his brother married her sister, a mace, and then died, the sister is exempt from both Chalitza and Yibum with her main brother, since she is ushered to him by Torah law. Mishnah Tes. Shemeres Yavam Shekidish Achiv Es Achosa. If a woman was waiting Yibum with an older brother, and his younger brother went and was Mekadesh her sister, but a different, right? So not the Yavama, but a different sister. Mishum Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira Amru. Then the Chum said in the name of Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira Amru Lo, we said to the younger brother, Hamtein Ad Yasa Achicha Hagad Maisa. Wait to complete your marriage with your wife until your older brother performs either Yibum or Chalitza, so that your Yibum bond with that sister is erased. Chalas la achiv o kansa. Once his older brother performs Chalitza with her or marries her Yibum, Yichnos es ishto, he can fulfill, then he can marry his wife that he was, that he had given Erison to, since there's no longer a Yibum bond between the Yavama and the other brothers. Mesa Yavama, if the Yavam died before the other brother performed either Yibum or Chalitza with her, Yichnos is Ishto, this brother may marry his wife since there is no longer any Yibum bond. Mesa Yavam, however, if the Yavam died and only the younger brother remains, Yotzi as Ishto beget, he must send away his wife with a get. He must divorce her since he has a Yibum bond with her sister. The Aish is Achib Chalitza, and he must then release his brother's wife with Chalitza. He can't do Yibum with her since she is his divorced wife's sister. Mishnah Yud. Hayavama lo sach lo this Yabin. Yevamos should not perform Chalitza or be taken in Yibum. Again, as we said, until she has 3 months passed from the time of her husband's passing until we can tell whether she's pregnant or not. Since she has to wait for Yibum, she also has to wait for Chalitza. Because if she's pregnant during those 3 months, then Yibum and Chalitza is out the window. Similarly, all other women who remarry should not become engaged, betrothed, and certainly should not have their marriage completed. They should not go into the chuppah until they have 3 months passing from the time the first marriage ended, so that if they become pregnant, we can tell whether the pregnancy is from the first husband or the second husband. This applies to both basulos, virgins and non-virgins. Whether they lived with their husbands or not. So they were only engaged and they actually lived together. Doesn't matter. They still have to wait 3 months. Echad gerushos, echad almanos. This applies to both divorced women and to widows. Echad nesuos, echad arusos. And to both women who were fully married and those that were only betrothed to the first husbands. Doesn't matter. Anytime she's engaged, married, divorced, widowed, whatever, she always has to wait 3 months between the end of the first marriage until the day she can get engaged or married to the second guy. It's a little plug. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Hanasuos yisarsu." Women who were fully married to the first husbands may immediately be betrothed by a second husband, since women who are engaged, they have heirs and they do not usually live with their husbands yet. So therefore, if they show signs of pregnancies within the first 3 months, they know it's from the first husband. Varusos Yunasu. But women who are only engaged to the first husband. Sorry, let's start this again. Rehuda says, "Hanasuvos yisarsu." Women who are fully married to their first husband when the marriage ended, they can get engaged to a second husband, but they cannot complete the marriage because when you're in arusa, when you're engaged, you're not engaging in intimacy until the wedding. So if she shows that she is pregnant, then you know that she is that's from the first husband. The arusos, but women who were only betrothed, they were only engaged to the first husbands, they never had intimacy. They can immediately complete their marriage with the second husband without the 3 months, because we can assume that they did not have intimacy and the pregnancy is not from him. Chutz min harusos shebi Yehuda. These leniencies apply everywhere except to women who were engaged in Judea. They must wait 3 months before marrying another man. Because the minhag was in Judea to let a engaged couple be alone together so he is familiar with her when they complete their marriage, and therefore we are afraid that maybe they had bia before Nisuin while they were still engaged. Rabbi Yossi says, "Kol hanash." It's very interesting how Rabbi Yehuda is talking about what they did in Yehuda, in Judea. It's very interesting. Rabbi Yossi says, "Kol hanashim yisarsu." All women become engaged immediately after the first marriage ends, so they can get taken of erisin. Chutz min halmana, except for a widow from a completed marriage, because she cannot become engaged for 30 days after her husband dies. Why? If they had Yibum, because she is in a veilus over her first husband for 30 days, and therefore must go through the veilus. Okay, Mishnah Yud Aleph. Arba Achin, Nisuin, Arba Nashim Mesu. Four of the brothers in the family were married to 4 women and they died. In Matzagados Shemahem, the Yavama Kulan, the oldest of the living brothers wishes to perform Yibum with all the 4 widows. Harishus Biyado, he has the right to do so. Misha Hayanaso, the Shtei Nashim Meis. If someone was married to 2 women and he died, Yasa or Chalitza, so shall Achas Behem Poteres Sarasa. The cohabitation or Chalitza of one of the widows with the Yavam patters her co-wife from Yibum or Chalitza, and she is free to remarry without receiving these herself. If one of the widows was eligible to marry a Kohen and the other one was disqualified, then if the living brother was planning to perform Chalitza, which disqualifies a woman from marrying a Kohen, the Psula, then he should perform Chalitza with the disqualified widow. Since she is disqualified to a Kohen anyhow, he should not needlessly disqualify the other widow from marrying a Kohen by performing Chalitza with her. But if he was planning to perform Yibum, he may perform Yibum even with the woman who is eligible to a Kohen. Okay, Mr. Yabes, someone who, the intro to this is that someone who performs, someone who does Chalitza with his Yavama, he is now forever also to marry her. And if he violates this Isser, he is Chai of Malchus, but not Kares. So now what happens, we're going to talk about it now, but the status of any children that he has with her after they do Chalitza, as well as the status of children that he fathers from any of her other close relatives. We'll talk about that now. Mishnah Yibes, Hamaksik Yerusha, so someone who takes back his divorced wife after she married a divorced husband and was divorced or widowed from him, I know say Chalitza, so someone marries his Chalitza, but I know say Krovas Chalitza, so or someone who marries a close relative of his Chalitza, Yotzi, he must send her away. They cannot stay married to her. Vlad Mamzer, and the child born from that marriage is a Mamzer. The Rabbi Akiva, these is according to Rabbi Akiva. All these marriages are they violate a Isdoraisa whose ownish is Malchus. But it's Rabbi Akiva's opinion that a child born from a relationship that's punishable by Malchus is a Mamzer. He treats such marriages like marriages to an erva, and therefore none of these women even need a divorce, according to Rabbi Akiva, since their marriages never took effect. The Chachamim say, and Yavama, the child is not a Mamzer. In their opinion, a child born from a relationship punishable by Kares, by Malchus, is not a Mamzer, which we're going to talk about in the next Mishnah. Ramodim benose krovas grushaso. However, the Chachamim agree with regard to someone who marries a relative of the wife that he divorced, she'avad mamzer, that the child is a mamzer, since those relationships remain punishable by Kares, a wife's relatives do not become permitted as a result of her divorce. And Mishnah Yigimel, it's a long one. Ezu mamzer. So who's a mamzer? What's a mamzer? Kosher basashu below Yavo. It is the child of a forbidden relationship with any relative about whom the Torah says he shall not cohabit with her, even if the penalty for doing so is only Malchus. This is according to Rabbi Akiva. Shimon Hatimni Omer, Shimon Hatimni says, Kosher Chayav love Kares, that the Mamzer is a child of any forbidden relationship for which one is punishable with Kares at the hands of heaven. And the law, the halacha follows his view. A third opinion, Yeshua says, based in that an Mamzer is a child of any forbidden relationship for which one is punishable by Misa at the hands of the court to be executed. So Amar Shimon ben Azai, Shimon ben Azai brings a support for Rabbi Yeshua. I once found a scroll of lineage which listed in Yerushalayim, it Kasaba, and it was written there, Ish Plomzi, Ish Ploni, Mamzer Meishas Ish. So and so is a Mamzer from relationship between a man and a married woman. He's someone else's wife. The kind of Rabbi Yeshua, this upholds the words of Rabbi Yeshua, since the punishment for living with someone else's wife is Mises based in. Um, the Mefarshim said that the assumption is that the scroll spelled out the reason for his being a mamzer to make clear that the halacha follows Yeshua's view. Nevertheless, the halacha follows the view of Shimon Timni, as the Mishnah said above. Ishto Shemesa, if a man's wife died, mutter ba'achos, he is allowed to marry her sister. Gersha Mesa, if he divorced his wife and she later died, mutter ba'achos, he is mutter to marry her sister. Nises la'acher Mesa, if a divorced wife married someone else and then died, mutter ba'achos, he is allowed to marry her sister. Yevim Tosha Mesa, if a man's Yavama died, he is allowed to marry her sister. Chalitza of a Mesa, if he performed Chalitza with her and she died, he is permitted to marry her sister. That's all for today. Thank you for staying with us. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you tomorrow for Perek, which is a little bit shorter. Have a wonderful day.